Vikes Now! I am Dustin Baker. We are here on a Victory Sunday, which will soon be a Victory Monday when you're probably watching this. Man, these Vikings should have beat the hell out of the 49ers. The game should have ended up some shit like 30-7, but it was not a totally clean game, but we don't care. We will take it somehow. The Vikings are 2-0, and I want to go around this glorious panel. I want to get reactions, and then we have to kind of reset our expectations because I guess people could lie and be like, yeah, I saw this team going 2-0. But my very first observation, I kept thinking about this on my entire drive home for US Bank Stadium, which is about 4 hours, and I've instructed Coda to close her ears for this factoid, is Vikings football feels so loose and anxiety-free when you don't pay a quarterback $40 to $45 million. You don't have these expectations. So it's kind of like when Sam Darnold is balling out for 2 games, this guy is an upgrade. I'm sorry to say it, but his efficiency, there is no downgrade whatsoever. And it just feels like, and I'm a Kirk Cousins guy. I really enjoy Kirk Cousins. But when you're not paying your quarterback $40 to $45 million, you can waltz into your living room or into the stadium and just kind of, oh, this is going to be good. We'll see what happens, baby. But when you're paying a quarterback that much money, you have this weight of expectations that, oh, we got to get to the Super Bowl, got to beat the 49ers and do all this. So it just feels like house money this season. This keeps coming back in my brain. I have 55 more reactions to this game than that, but I didn't think that would be brought up. I'm going to start at the top of the squares here. Tyler, the Vikings win by 6. I want any type of tangent reaction you want to give the viewers.
Holy shit is my reaction. Sorry if that affects demonetization, but I actually went, and traveled outside of my house for once in my life and went to a Vikings bar here in Brandon, Florida, just outside of Tampa. And I was watching this game with a group of Vikings fans, and I was nervously watching. I wasn't going into this expecting a win. I was expecting a loss. I know leading up to this game last week, in a unreleased episode with Josh, Dustin, and I, we were kind of like trying to pump the brakes a little bit. Okay, we beat the Giants, but they're the Giants, and we're going against, Goliath, and we're David when it comes to the Niners. But, I mean, this game, we should have beat them by more than what we did, which is crazy considering the fact that we weren't favored by anyone to win this game outside of Daniel Jeremiah. So, yeah, I'm really stoked. I got to see the last minutes of the Lions-Buccaneers game where the Buccaneers stole that game too. Mm-hmm. And, with this Sunday night football game, with that result being the Bears lost, the Vikings now sit atop the NFC North at 2-0, which is something that no one expected. So I'm just super pumped, and I'm just along for the ride like everyone else.
Tyler, do you think they're good? Like good?
I think they are, at the very least, wild card contenders, and I know that sounds odd considering we're leading the division. That's kind of a low bar, but it's only 2 weeks in, and I'm trying to manage my expectations. But I really love the efficiency from Sam Darnold. The Niners have such a great defense, and he played a really solid game. He had one bad turnover, but I think you can expect that from Sam Darnold. And at least once a game, there's just going to be a decision he makes where it's like, oh, why did you do that? But what's important is we were able to reel him in a bit, and we got him to play good football. So at the very least, this is a wild card team, if not, potential division winner. But it's just so soon. I don't want to make that bold proclamation yet that the Vikings are going to win the division, but it's looking great so far.
My wife on the 4-hour drive home was asking about Darnold, trying to get the scouting report, like, has he ever been this good? And then she was talking about Nick Mullins, and I was saying, well, Darnold has the arm. Nick Mullins is a slinger, but he doesn't quite have that arm. Anyhow, I said the difference is you can expect one of those gaffes, almost like, a Joe Biden gaffe. Like, it's going to happen. Just be prepared for it. He meant well. You're going to have that from Sam Darnold once per game. The difference between he and Mullins is you're guaranteed to get it twice from Nick Mullins. And so far, Darnold is capping it at 1. Dakota, I want to hear, like, I bet you're pretty stoked about this. Speak on it.
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, obviously, we all know my love for Kirk Cousins. It will continue because he's a player that means a lot to me. However, I do want to point out that I was one of the only people in this panel who was actively on the JJ McCarthy hype train and who is genuinely fighting in the trenches on Twitter about Sam Darnold actually being a good bridge quarterback between Kirk Cousins and JJ McCarthy. So I did just want to point that out. I personally, I feel like it's no surprise that I'm going to come in here with a fairly optimistic view because I think that has kind of become my brand on Twitter is a little bit of the optimism. In the preseason, I was going on a bunch of different podcasts, including this one, and making the bold prediction of 12 and 5. I personally, especially after this win, believe that we have what it takes to go 12 and 5. I'm not convinced on the Texans after today's game. I don't turn off football, even if it's like one team is single-handedly destroying the other team and the other team has no points. I watch it until the end. I turned off this game. I was bored. I took a shower. I'm not convinced by these Texans, and I wasn't convinced by these Niners. I haven't been since preseason because of the whole Brandon Ayuk situation, because call me a little superstitious. Yes, I genuinely did think that there was something going to happen with Christian McCaffrey. Of course, nobody ever wishes injury on anybody, but to me, their Super Bowl run last season felt like a fluke. And I knew going into this game that it wasn't going to be the same Niners, and going off of the stats that you were posting this morning about how the Niners have never won in Minnesota since, I believe, 1992. I wasn't even born yet. That was 6 years before I was born. You think I'm going to throw caution to the wind and go, nah, stats and superstition mean nothing? No, absolutely not. So I think that the difference here between Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold is purely Kirk Cousins gets emotional after interceptions. We saw that in the game last week, and I've been saying it for weeks to all of my Falcon fan friends that he's going to throw an interception and it's going to go into his head. Sam Darnold throws an interception, goes, I'll get him next time. And that is purely the difference here. Do I think we could have single-handedly won this game had there been one less turnover, one less fumble, etc.? Yeah, absolutely. But I personally saw going into this game, it was going to be a scrappy fight and it was going to be a little bit of a messy win. I'm happy. I'm satisfied with this game. And if you couldn't tell by my voice, I definitely was yelling a lot because I was so excited by this game. So anyway, that's my tangent. That probably made no sense.
No, it did make sense. And you're the only one on this panel to predict 12 and 5. That's for damn sure. At halftime, even though I was sitting there at the game, I had to go check to see if Ayuk was playing. I had to go see if he had a snap count because he just didn't do anything in the first half. Yes. And the last time the 49ers won a football game in the state of Minnesota was the same weekend that A Few Good Men was released in movie theaters, for anybody that's old to remember. All right, Brevin Bain, the weekly Saturday night, now Sunday night guest. What do you got for reactions? Vikings 49ers 23-17.
Honestly, I don't know if it's a good old fashioned, but it sure was an ass whooping. I'm of the opinion that the 49ers are still the class of the NFC. I guess I would disagree with the point that the 49ers Super Bowl run was fluky last year, just because I think the 49ers have been at the top of the NFC for the past 5 years. So I think the window's definitely coming to a close in the next couple of years, but the 49ers didn't play bad at all. Like, Brock Purdy played really, really well. McCaffrey was out. They still had over 100 yards rushing. Debo had 110. George Kittle had 7 for 76 in the touchdown. Like, these were the 49ers. This wasn't the 49ers no showing. This wasn't Christian McCaffrey costing them anything. This was Minnesota from start to finish, foot on throat. They never trailed in the game. And when they had to close out the game, they did it without Justin Jefferson. They did it without TJ Hawkinson. They did it without Aaron Jones. So the Vikings, and again, I truly, not just because I'm a Vikings fan, they beat the 49ers. The 49ers are still the class of the NFC. Jalen Naylor, wide receiver 1. Brandon Powell, wide receiver 2. Ty Chandler, running back 1. Josh Oliver, tight end 1. Sam Darnold throwing to them. Dominated and closed out the 49ers in the end of the game. And there was a couple moments to where it was, okay, the Vikings just made a gaffe, like you mentioned the Joe Biden gaffes. Nice timing on that one. This is where I'm starting to be, because you asked Tyler, are the Vikings good? I think they're good. I think Tyler is right with the wild card contenders. I'm much less convinced, not much less. I'm a little less convinced that the Vikings are good, and now more convinced that Kevin O'Connell is one of the best coaches in the NFL. Because what was done today should not have been able to be done. And I feel like I've been one of the kind of pump the brakes on Kevin O'Connell a little bit. Like, we were calling him a quarterback whisperer a year ago. He's never developed a quarterback. What he's doing with Sam Darnold, I think last year he had like the 2 weeks with Josh Dobbs. What he's doing with Sam Darnold right now, the progression of JJ McCarthy, very promising. So for this year, still, I think I had us between 7 and 9 wins. I think we're, of course, more toward that 9-win mark now, and that might be a floor just because of how much the schedule lightens up after today. But what I come out of today with is less the Vikings can compete this year and more Kevin O'Connell is the guy. And I feel like I may be overreacting there, but I think Kevin O'Connell is one of the best coaches in the NFL just from what we've seen, not just this week, but last week. So that's kind of, I guess that's what I come out with it. And also Patrick Jones, congratulations. You're good. That's crazy. 4 sacks, second in the NFL, going against Andrew Thomas and Trent Williams the last 2 weeks. But yeah. Oh, and one more thing about Kevin O'Connell. Per Alec Lewis, the Minnesota Vikings in the Kevin O'Connell era are now 19-0 when the turnover battle is won or tied. In Vikings. So yeah, big Kevin O'Connell guy, even bigger than I was before.
I've got some other things to throw in here in case we forget in the remaining 12 minutes or so. Ty Chandler was the Vikings' best running back today. Aaron Jones will probably be the best, hopefully stays healthy. But Ty Chandler did what we asked in terms of trying to end a football game by handing the ball off. He did exactly that. By the numbers, he was the best running back. Andrew Van Ginkel is in on every defensive play. It's like, when there is a tackle for a loss or there's a tipped ball, every time I see his Hawkinson-like hair, and I'm like, God, that guy is $10 million he costs us per season. He's in on every play. Patrick Jones, I was convinced there, if you were to take off Patrick Jones's clothes and uniform, it would be Dallas Turner, the body there, because it felt like it was Dallas Turner's athleticism doing all of that carnage. Sadly, I think if there was an MVP from this game, it would have been Fred Warner. That guy kept him in the football game, and I just don't know if there's any defensive player playing better football right now. And then the 97-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson, that there is no debate here. That will be one of the most beautiful plays that you will ever see in Vikings history, mainly because of the length. 97-yard touchdowns don't grow on trees. So that thing forever will live in Vikings lore. Hopefully Darnold's a part of this thing, and makes this season special.
And credit on that, too, to Jalen Naylor. I just wanted to throw that out there. Jalen Naylor with that block. Just wanted to add that in.
My guy.
It was incredible how swiftly he showed up to have the threat of blocking. Yeah, and then it's just Jefferson's MO that once he catches a bomb, like his very first touchdown in the NFL, it had that zag effect. It's like, he's going to reverse, and you can't catch him after that.
It gave me the vibes of the Ravens game a couple years ago where Justin Jefferson came in blocking, I think, for KJ Osborne. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And he was doing the weird arm thing. I was like, what is he doing?
Yeah, it felt like a cartoon character. Yeah. All right, so Tyler, we're going to get back to you here. I asked you if the Vikings were good, and it sounds like the answer can be yes, but I want to know, this is 2-0, beating probably the second best team in football, at least per roster talent. Is this sustainable? The viewers at home are probably watching this 4-person panel to say, is it a green light to think, gosh, these guys can contend for the divisional round, NFC championship? Like, you start looking at the schedule, everybody seems beatable because the Chiefs aren't on it. I want to hear your revised expectation for this season, Tyler.
Yeah, it's definitely sustainable because over the past 2 games, what we've seen is a relentless pass rush with multiple contributors and a strong running game between Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler getting, having a sizable role is really important. So it's not all that pressure isn't on Aaron Jones. So just by having a strong defense and a strong running game, we're a lot better off now than we were last year, where, Danielle Hunter was having to generate all of the pressure on his own, and Alexander Mattison wasn't getting it done early in the season. So long as Sam Darnold just makes the right plays and manages the game and, doesn't put the ball in harm's way too much, then I think we're in a good spot. Why can't we be, the Baker Mayfield Bucks or the Geno Smith Seahawks with a very clearly a system quarterback at the helm, but just, a fantastic supporting cast and a great offensive coordinator, and just sort of a team that sneaks into the playoffs, whether it be by winning the division like the Bucks did last year, or just being one of the wild card teams in a tougher division like Seattle was. So yes, it's definitely sustainable. Although if you would allow me to go on a tangent here, I wrote down 3 things that I'm really looking forward to. Some of this is more Texans related, more Bears related, just things that I observed from this game that I think will relate to the Vikings in the future. The first thing I want to mention is Caleb Williams. He didn't have a good game, and he didn't have a good game last week. He didn't have a good game this week. But the thing is he's showing signs of growth each game. And this is not me trying to, blaze Caleb Williams by any means, but we don't play the Bears until week 12. And I just don't think that the version of the Bears we're seeing right now is the version we're going to see when we play them in late November. And that's just the first matchup against them. We play them later in the season as well. So, what Chris Collinsworth was saying is that, like, Caleb.
Oh, he's doing his best Jared Goff in the clutch on 4th and 8 against the Buccaneers.
I wonder if he knows that it's tripping there.
The NFL hates what he's about to say about Caleb Williams.
All right, we'll have to get him. We'll have to see if he comes back to wrap up his tangent. He can probably tell by the way that we have started. All right, so we'll get back to Tyler on that point. Spitfire, I know you're going to be high on this, but tell me, why should a viewer here on Monday?
Am I back?
You'll be back in just a second. Hold on. Tell me, Spitfire, why should a viewer be excited about the Vikings more than just some lucky 2-0 start?
I think you should be excited purely just because of the way, like I said earlier, coming from Kirk Cousins, who gets emotional after he throws an interception and it messes with his mentality for the next 2, 3, 4, sometimes the entire game, not just drives. Sam Darnold, like I said, he throws an interception, goes, okay, like what's next? What do I do next? Kind of the similar mentality of JJ McCarthy. He throws an interception. Now I can actually play football sort of mentality. But for me, it's purely that sort of mentality has also kind of gotten over to Kevin O'Connell as well, to kind of touch on Brev's point. Previously Kevin O'Connell would call a bad play that would end in a turnover or, end a good drive or whatever. And I feel like for the next couple of drives, we could tell that KOC was playing a little bit more conservatively because he was scared that it would fuck up again if he did something creative. And we saw today that he had a couple of plays that they had designed that were just no-goes, but he didn't shy away from continuing to do them, like that one Jalen Naylor play that resulted in a touchdown. That was pretty fun. That was pretty cool. I enjoyed having, and I think it was the Ravens who had done something really similar week 1 where they kind of hid their wide receiver. And I thought that was fun. Like, keep doing that. Let's do more of that. Ultimately, though, I think as long as this offense can stay more in their head, less emotional than they have been previous years with Kirk Cousins at the helm. I think that will really drive the idea in my brain that they are a legit deal. My biggest concern at this current moment is the momentum of the defense. I think they are still at fault of this thing that they keep doing lately, and it's been this way for a couple of years, where they start off really great, but as the game goes down, they just deteriorate slowly and slowly. They get tired slowly and slowly. So for me, I would like to see them maintain that energy all throughout, whether it's not coming in right out of the gates as aggressive, whether it's, finding ways to sort of preserve energy in the second and the third quarters. Either way, though, that I don't want to say it because I don't want to jinx us, but I have a good feeling that maybe we have finally found the recipe that has us balanced both offensively and defensively versus one being better than the other.
Yeah,
Knock on wood, of course.
I keep thinking, despite some of the turnovers, that maybe it's because they're winning these two games, the turnovers don't feel like death blows or nauseating, and it feels like this team is very well coached from Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell. And the proof is in the pudding with the 2 wins. Brevin, I'm going to ask you the same thing about sustainability, but I want to ask you this. And I can't remember if we touched on this last week. So Sam Darnold will be in start number 3 for these Vikings next Sunday. And last year, Josh Dobbs turned into a pumpkin after 2 games. Jake Browning in Cincinnati just went on a little bit of a decline after about 3 games. It seems like if you're a good backup quarterback, you're always good for 2 games until you get figured out. Do we have to worry about that with Sam Darnold's sustainability, or because he has the arm talent unabashedly, is he good to go within this system?
Yeah, I remember us touching on that last week. I think there's definitely validity to that, but I think Sam Darnold is a much better quarterback and way more talented than Josh Dobbs and Jake Browning. So if I were to bet on Sam Darnold lasting longer than those two, then it would I'd put the money on him. Week 3 though, and I know Houston, like, they won a close one last week, they won a close one there tonight, but week 3 I think is where these really good teams, if they haven't already, they start to figure it out. And I think the Texans are going to start to figure it out. Thinking about the game today for Minnesota, I don't know if it's sustainable exactly, because defensively, like Hoda was saying, like, San Francisco was moving the ball fine. Like, Purdy completed most of his passes. He was really cool under pressure. They were running the ball effectively, way better in the first half than the second half. So Minnesota did kind of tighten up on the run game in the second half. But I mean, the 49ers still had almost, I think, 400 total yards, and it felt like a game from 2022. It just looked way cooler. So we're like 2022, they would bend and break, but bend and don't break, to where they would just like show up in the right moments. Here it was kind of more consistent. They didn't break that much, but they were still letting them get downfield, and that is where I'm like, I don't know if that's sustainable. Offensively, I think when you've got a play caller like Kevin O'Connell, you're going to be getting Jordan Addison back healthy eventually. You're going to be getting TJ Hawkinson back eventually. You've got the best wide receiver on the planet, and Justin Jefferson, as long as that quad is okay, which it should be. I think offensively it's pretty sustainable. Defensively, again, I've got question marks, and I really liked what Tyler was saying too about the schedule. Like, Caleb Williams, he hasn't looked great his first 2 starts, but the tools are very obviously there. Like, everybody agrees he has the tools. You can see the flashes of it a little bit. So once we play them week 12, the Bears are going to be a bit different of a team when we play them. And that's exactly a point I was going to bring up. When we get to this part of the schedule, especially before the season and kind of right now, like, the middle of the schedule toward the end looks lighter, but some of these teams are going to be a lot better than we're giving them credit for. Like the Cardinals. Cardinals are they're gamers right now.
I picked them to go to the postseason.
I had them as my sleeper team as well before the season. The Cardinals are kind of tough. The Titans are looking a little bit. If Will Levis can figure it out, they could be competitive. The Jag, I don't know what's going on in Jacksonville. But the Rams look like one of the harder games that we'd have this year. And again, and you can't predict injuries. You don't hope for injuries. But like we thought our injury problems were bad last year. The Rams are like,
Oh my
dude,
God.
there's no team. So now suddenly that's one of your easier games as it stands right now. So this schedule, it just changes so much and things are so volatile, I guess for lack of a better term, to where it's hard to predict and we're still in like the first 2 weeks of the season. And I hate doing that because it sounds like I'm taking away from what the Vikings have done the last 2 weeks, which I mean, it's the first 2 weeks, but
Right.
I don't know. I guess long story short, to answer your question, offensively sustainable, I think so. Defensively, I have questions.
If I
Um,
may, really
yeah.
quick, on that point too, I was talking to my family about this earlier, and I was excited, obviously, about the Vikings win and the fact that I was, gonna win the week in my family pick'em league. But my little brother had brought up the point that the Vikings are now at the top of the NFC North, and I replied with, "It's week 2. I don't care." Because being number 1 in the NFC North week 2 is like winning your first grade spelling bee. It's cool. You won your first grade spelling bee, but like in the long term, what does that amount to? It's like Brev said, it's week 2. Teams are going to start figuring their shit out. I mean, look at the Chiefs last year. They looked like a disaster at this point in the season, and then of course they went on to win the Super Bowl. So I again, like, I'm excited that we look good. I'm excited that things are maybe clicking for us, but I just, even as the optimist that I am, hoping for this 12-5 run, I'm still going to be realistic and remind myself this is week 2. It's great that we're getting this lead in the NFC North because a lot of people agree that the NFC North is probably going to be one of the better divisions in the NFC this year. But I still want to be realistic and remind myself, like, yeah, we got the Texans week 3. Who knows how the Jets, because the Jets are starting to look kind of like they have it together now. Who knows how they're going to be in London? I'm going to week 8 here in LA. Who knows if Puka Nacua is going to be back, which, knock on wood, I love Puka Nacua and I have him on all of my fantasy leagues. If he's going to be back and, or if the Rams defense is going to get their whole shebang together. So I don't know. I just, like, again, I want to be excited, but like Brev said, it's week 2. Anything can happen between now and the next 10 weeks when we play the Bears for the first time.
When you talked about the Rams injury woes, one of the chief reasons they won the Super Bowl in 2021 is because they had incredible health, like so much injury luck, lack thereof, that the reason it was attrition. And, among other items, that's one of the reasons they won a Super Bowl. And speaking of that Rams game, I'm going to that one with my wife and son. One of my best friends meeting me there, Wes Johnson, he was really flustered last year. He came to Vikings Packers at US Bank Stadium, and almost within 10 minutes, you could tell that game had just face planted. And he was pissed about spending all the money to get from California, San Francisco to Minneapolis. And he was like, I'm done spending big money on the Vikings till they show me otherwise. So he came up with this plan to go to Los Angeles this year. And I told him when we were vacationing together like a month ago, I was saying, are you prepared to go to that LA game when the Vikings are about 1-6? Because that could realistically happen. And he was just like, yep, no expectations. But that's what I was talking about like a month ago, is how you should expect the Vikings to be 2-5 or 1-6 going into that game. And now we can maybe walk into that game with broad shoulders as fans, as players, because they just look so damn good. And then Brev, on the 2022 point, it was very much a 2022 win. It was all said and done. The reason it felt like a 2022 win is because of that close score. But most of the 2022 games were like a tug of war. Like the Patriots, we needed a Kene Nwangwu touchdown to swing the momentum back to us. Jets felt closer than it should. And this game, it just felt like every time the Vikings got the ball after the 97-yard touchdown, it was like, all right, if they score, we're going to be fine. And a lot of those 2022 games were back and forth and wondering, oh, God, are we going to be able to not have a 3-and-out here? So there's a little bit more competence to this team, which is probably why they're 2-0, and we have these, really optimistic visions about what they could be. All right, we're running short on time. Briefly, Brev, any closing arguments before we wrap up on this post-game edition?
I just want to make it clear again, because I might have just sounded very negative about saying it's only week 2. I'm very excited for what the Vikings are doing right now, and I have high hopes that they can make the playoffs, and I just want to see my favorite football team win on Sunday so I can be happy all week, because I let my entire emotional being in-state get determined by a football team, and I have to do that with another team here in a couple weeks when the Wild start playing as well. So go Vikings! I really am a fan of them.
All right, so we got the bet hedge here from Brev, who cleaned up what he considers a little bit of sour pessimism. No,
Yeah.
you did just fine. Spitfire, anything to close out the show?
See, I'm gonna say, now imagine being me and having a football team determine my emotional state for a week, and I have to deal with children Monday morning. Like, I'm a teacher now. So imagine going into your drama teacher class being like, okay, I guess I have to teach you guys now after a Vikings loss. So don't lose, boys, or else those kids are not going to have any fun with me as their teacher. But I will say, final argument, Sam Darnold is here, man. Sammy Darts truly is here. And I made fun of my dad for saying that whenever he goes to a Vikings game, he's going to do the Skull chant by going, Sam. And I'm eating those words now. So, Dad, good job on calling this one. I love you.
My final argument is me being a broken record. I will tell people every single time I talk to them about the Vikings, you never, ever have to worry about Sam Darnold's arm. That usually with a guy like this who's found his way as a journeyman, you have to say, yeah, but can he make that throw? Like Gardner Minshew, if he was the Vikings quarterback, he can't make all the throws. He can have sweet hair, a sweet beard, whatever it is. But with Sam Darnold, he has the 3rd overall pick in the draft talent. And so no matter what happens, if he starts to get in his turnover bag a little bit, you never have to worry about that arm because he has it, and you saw a little bit of sneaky mobility today. All right, Dakota, we hope you'll join us next Sunday night when we dissect the Vikings win over the Texans. That's the way it feels like it's going. Otherwise, Brev, we'll talk to you next Sunday night. All right, man?
Yeah.
All right, guys, take it easy. Skol, baby.
Skol.